as prompt as possible. And we've had a bit of practice now because it's our 30th webinar with engagement at the centre. And today we're looking back at an event we ran, which we were really happy about being able to run it. And when we did it, we had a packed house. And what we did is we took digital transformation. And I think what attracted people was the fact we were taking something complex, and we had, through the title that I put up with dot to dot's very simple. So I think it piqued people's interest, because how can you take something that's got so many moving parts, that is so complex and difficult? How can these guys think they can turn it into a dot to dot? Now, what we went through with return on investment is we investigated how difficult it was, and we know it's really hard. And the kind of story that we're told was the fact that if that's the yellow customer journey line through the center, with the yellow customer at the center of the operations with digital transformation, the story that a guy called Matt Cooling took us through was the fact, actually, what he's found in his background is the fact that to achieve an ROI, what's good is to extract out a process. And this is where you see the process symbol here. If I move to the after picture, in that bottom left, there's a process there, which we call the innovation process. So what he has successfully done as an insight into successful change transformation is to extract and take out, in a bit of a divide and conquer pattern, the process there of the innovation. So it sends it out as a kind of precursor of something you would do first. What that allows you to do is to identify the hard measures that you can absolutely measure and get hold of, because what we recognized in the story is that sometimes all of these different types of measures can get jumbled. So we looked at hard measures, and that black symbol is the measure symbol. We looked at soft measures, and then we looked at some related benefits. And I thought this was a valuable insight, because what it did was, using Big Picture as the tool, it broke down quite a lot of complexity. It was a divide and conquer pattern, and it allowed us to hang our hat on an innovation process where you can then talk about who's responsible, who makes up the team, what are the hard measures that you're going to actually pin the business case against, what opportunities does that present, how are you going to fund the innovation process itself, because it becomes a thing, and as a thing, that it needs its own definition, and it's probably away from the customer journey, because at this point it is just an idea that is proving itself. You can see that as part of packaging up this insight, what we're used to doing to give you an idea how we would run this is we give some prompt and cue cards. So these are resources that you can take within your team and ask the right kind of questions, raise the right kind of conversations. And our flavor of engagement is very much around conversation prompts and giving people in the team, both the transformation team and the wider community, the kinds of prompts and thoughts that lead to good conversations. And that's the flavor of engagement. We talked about managing the scope of transformation effort, and you can see there across the page, we've got the customer journey running from left to right. Now, assuming this is a transformation that revolves around the customer, another guy came on, he told his story. He's called Sean Sankey. You can find him on my LinkedIn. He told the story of how, for more in an SME community, instead of trying to transform the whole journey from left to right, actually, or pull the slider across, by creating what he defined as a peak moment. And I believe, well, I've read about it since, Chip and Dan Heath talk about peak moments. The idea is here that you actually zone down on a limited scope for that transformation. So again, there's a theme here, which is a bit of divide and conquer, breaking down complexity in the way that you focus. And it sounds pretty straightforward when I explain it, but what's interesting is, if you tell the story in a certain way with certain people, then in the room, then they can make their own connections because of the way we use symbols and visuals. And these would be all physical products, like you can see behind me. I've got the board and the paper in front of me. We're going to look at how we strengthen the engagement and therefore make those transformation efforts more successful using the kind of evidence we've got and the models that we've built around that. So I'm going to hand over to Craig. So take it away. Thank you.
So Martin, what's Martin's just shared in terms of some of the outputs of the digital dot-to-dot session were some of the connections that people shared, collaborated upon at that session. And that's very much in a operational business view. And one thing that you might recognise in your own experience is that in running a transformation or being part of a transformation, you might feel that everything's in place, you're making progress, but then something's kind of sideswipes you. And for me, if we look above the operational activity that's going on and start to look at some key factors which need to be happening across the business that shares a team of teams view. So you might find yourself within operations and basically delivering the product or service. So there's 4 factors here that I'm sharing on screen in terms of the split model. Split is a method that I've developed. It's a holistic approach that's centered around people and how they work most effectively at scale. Split is an acronym. It stands for sustainable performance, which fundamentally is why we're interested in making change. And that's achievable through connecting leadership, innovation, and transformation. And these paths, which show the flow between, is kind of an ideal state of where you want to be as an organisation, so that we have some active innovation, getting close to our customer, understanding how those needs are shifting, how the environment in which you're operating is shifting, and fundamentally what opportunities there may be to deliver an improvement in performance for the organisation. And of course, we have people in change and transformation. Chad, you will be very familiar with that role, I'm sure. Might be managing a portfolio of change or programs to deliver change. But, you know, how well do you gain buy-in from operations? Who are you seeking to influence? What is the relationship like with the leadership, the board? Do they give you control? Do they empower you? And so trying to think about the environment in which you are operating, and does the environment and the culture allow you to make the kind of progress and inroads that you're seeking to make for the organisation? What does it take to give organisations the capability to adapt to change readily, to have that change embedded within the organisational fabric? So the challenge really is to help people rethink transformation, embrace that change, and allow transition to take place more naturally, rather than necessarily holding an organisation in a state that's not natural. Share your experience of the biggest challenges and opportunities that you faced whilst delivering organisational change or seeking to improve the performance of the organisation. So I can see that we've got, don't know what good looks like, dropped in. Fantastic. So we're looking at the relationship there between lead and your role within transformation. Are we looking at lead and operations, or just generally the leadership and the impact that has?
Well, for me, it was that wider leadership behind great change. You know, we know it's part of, you know, being a good leader, but if it's not there, or if it's lacking or waning at times, you're going to be in trouble for your transformation.
Fabulous. Yeah, no, it's really good. I think that will be the one point that, if I had to draw any, is the game changer at the moment. And it's one that's gathering worldwide recognition and momentum, recognising that we're trying to shift organisations from a command and control style leadership to one that is more empowering of teams. And that's a big challenge for board members that have grown up operating in a certain way. Okay, so we've got loads here. Understand what is possible within a specific organisation.
I think my experience shows that sometimes organisations want to do things that other organisations have done, but depending on how that organisation operates and its history and everything else, the people within it, it's not always possible to copy everyone else. So I think the challenge is to recognise what's possible in that organisation, but then balance that with the desires of the leadership to create change.
So there's a couple of points in there, and I've brought across inertia as well. Fundamentally, this model is designed to show a flow. If there are really good innovation activity going on with the organisation, how well is that connected to the challenges that's being experienced operationally within the business? Or is it whimsical, big blue picture thinking, or blue sky thinking, that's what I was trying to say. But actually, people can't see the tangible benefit of that at this point in time. For people to get inertia, or to get over inertia, we need to start to see that flow occurring. And the point of split is that there's often break points. And what I'm trying to highlight, or trying to get you to think about, is where those real blockers exist, so that you can work to strengthen some of those connections. Time of disruption. Anyone else want to offer anything up from all these? Access to amazing ideas and resources.
Yeah, it's Martin here. I've just enjoyed being in a different role of actually contributing as opposed to holding it together. So I've added quite a few post-its because I've quite enjoyed the process. I'd like to think everybody's at least had one go, which was the one. Yeah, that was mine actually. Access to amazing ideas and resources. So there's very much what this challenges me to think about are the positives and negatives. So like the black hat thinking plus and the blue sky, as you've just said. But what it then does is put it against the 4 different areas. So I just think there's never been a time where ideas and resources have been more freely available. I probably use the word abundance in that respect, almost to the point where there's too much. It's almost too much, and you don't actually know where to stop. So it's maybe a challenge for innovation as well as it is an opportunity to know where to focus those ideas and how to break down that overwhelming sense of everybody's up to change, and what do we actually do in our organisation? Is it too overwhelming?
Thank you. Whilst you've been sharing that around the abundance of those, I've actually highlighted or pulled across one of the challenges: too many different models and approaches to realising transformation. And there is something about this consistency. From a business architecture perspective, and for people's certainty, they need to understand what framework they're operating by, and not just within their team, but how that interfaces with other aspects of the organisation.
Just add to that was one of my post-its, because what I'm seeing as an avid reader in our domain of change and transformation, and then through whatever reason, that being exposed to a number of external, say, consultancies or agencies over the years, they've all got different, all based on the same base theory, but different approaches and different opinions. We're all allowed to have opinions. But when you're trying to maybe mentor and coach your leaders or your colleagues, there's just so many variants out there.
So I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads there, Chad, so you're on something. And actually, that is the point of realisation that brought me to create, or motivated me to create Split, recognising that with such a wealth of some very mature frameworks, actually, the problem often is understanding those frameworks, those differences, and how they actually work together. And it's that together with identifying the capabilities that underpin a business or a business model, that actually brings some coherence. But fundamentally, from a activity perspective here, it's recognising that whilst you might have tools in place, resources in place, all your plans and the right engagements, unless you have things like leadership backing, active sponsorship, and all the other elements that you want to see working in flow, then your transformation is at risk. Therefore, looking above the day-to-day operation, standing back and understanding where you have strong relationships and where you have weaker relationships, by working to strengthen those that you're reliant upon, you can make big strides, not just in terms of helping your current transformation activity, but in terms of developing that capability to adapt more readily to change.
Yep.
Yeah.
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 Fabulous. So I can see from the orientation that those people that are in the board have been able to use the toolbar on the left-hand side and drag a icon and rename. So Martin, you're not present, so I'm going to use you because I'm already on there.
I was actually
So
adding my own, but yeah, do what you need to do to me. I was just adding one in the bottom right, but yeah. Oh, there I am twice now. I've got 2 roles. Here we are.
That's absolutely fine. So yeah, the very fact that I've got people's names on the board is great. We're in, and we're able to add symbols and set the context. Each of these frames, like delivery here that I'm moving about, we can rename that to whatever you refer your organisation. So that might be operations, it might be the customer contact centre, for example. It's set around the context of your business. And if I was to go back to Split and pick up one of the challenges that we were talking about, can you think within your organisation of a context where either the programme or portfolio you're responsible for is looking to make a change into operations?
Well, I tell you what we are doing. We're trying to move to a customer journey-centric organisation, which is a mindset shift. You know, it's redesigning, you know, the whole, and that's what I'd call one of the softer changes we're trying to do.
I couldn't have asked for a better introduction into this board. The one thing that no.
This is why we don't script it, right? Because people come up with much better answers than we could script. So that's just my observation.
So if we're sticking with the digital transformation theme, and we're thinking in the customer journey, there are various touch points we have with the customer. And Chad, if is one of the changes that you're making introducing or shifting the channel for some of your customers, trying to get them to use more online?
Right. So there's general customer digital. It's got a title along those lines, or platform. But yes, we are moving to more digital, but retaining, especially for vulnerable customers and certain other groups, traditional methods of contact.
So there's an element of customer platform that supports your customer. It might be for bill payments, for example. So what I've just captured there, and you should see on screen, is that along that customer journey, we have a role, the billing manager, that's perhaps supported by some new technology in terms of a customer platform, but actually there's a human challenge around that change resistance in terms of shifting from a manual process. And so we're beginning to see a pattern emerging.
I would like to add on to something that I think the human factor is the main driver here, what we see in that leadership. For leaders to make it happen, they've got to work through their teams, obviously, and engagement gains becomes an important factor there, especially during the current situation that we are in the world with the COVID-19. The things have got to change. We are transforming the ways we work, the ways we operate, And what makes it happen is the real driver is the people factor here, to get the people understand the change and help us with it and help the organizations with it. So inspirational leadership and servant leadership, I believe, becomes a major factor here to make it possible. So your visible leadership model is I think at the premium here.
Kind of summarize the key theme that is emerging here. It's recognition that leadership and getting that right is a big differentiator. I'd certainly agree with Chad's view that transformation activity can be quite a process, a system of work, if you will. But leadership is that humanizing bit. It's how you speak to people.
And I would just like to thank Craig for a very elegant segue through from the operational view up to more of a culture strategic point, and then back down in the big picture. I've not seen that before done so well as that in a demonstration, so I think that was very well done.